us whereof we are glad. I want to talk to you folks today from this thought. I can't help myself. Tell somebody I can't help myself. You know, the Four Tops, back in the 60s, recorded a song that said, I can't help myself. I don't want y'all to think I'm not who I am, but I remember who I was. You know, it started sugar pie, honey bunch. You know that I love you. I can't help myself. And that's when I think of the Lord. I can't help myself. When I think of all that he's done for me, I can't help myself. And as I've traveled this journey, there's been times that people have asked, Rev, why are you so joyful? You always laughing. You always got something to say. You're smiling. Why are you so full of joy? And I always give them the best answer that I can. And that's because the Lord's been good to me. But in reality, that answer never seems to be enough. But when I look back at all the Lord has done for me, to me, and through me, I can't help but be joyful. But I can't be joyful enough. And that's a mystery to those outside of our faith. Those that are outside of Christ. Whether we enjoy the best of health or whether we're lying on a sick bed, the Christian has a right to always be joyful. See, during the time of praise and thanksgiving, there's both joy and gladness. Those who know the Lord rejoice in his goodness. And at the same time, we're glad for the great blessings he has demonstrated. And as Christians, we face each new day with a spirit of joyfulness. And the reason we do it because we know that he didn't have to do it. But he did. You know that saying, if it had not been for the Lord who was on my side, where would I be? See, we know that whatever happens, our God is able to deliver us. And I don't know about you, but that makes me glad. And if you face the unknown with the spirit of gladness, God will make you glad. And when we look at our text, the writer David of this psalm, he had sufficient reason to be glad. David's life was filled with outward signs of God's blessing hand. From his rise to reign as king from a mere shepherd boy to his powerful command of the armies of Israel, David had plenty to be glad about. Church, David points out in this psalm that the source of his gladness was the goodness of the Lord. And that's ought to be our source of gladness. It's God's goodness. See, this was the source of the great expression of gladness which ranged from him dancing in the streets when he brought home the Ark of the Covenant or writing songs of praise. Bishop, you got to understand that gladness was a way of life for David. Here in our text, David expresses gladness that God returned Israel from the captivity and brought laughter and joy to his lips instead of sorrow. It's right there in verse 2. Notice it say, then was our mouths filled with laughter and our tongues will sing. And is there anybody here that God has filled your mouth with laughter when you didn't have nothing to laugh about? Haven't he filled your voice and your songs with singing when you had nothing to sing about? You weren't singing how dry I am. No. You were singing, victory is mine. And you ought to have a praise on your lips and a song in your heart when the Lord brings you out of your troubles, your trials, and your turmoil. David expressed that when he writes in the 100th Psalm, serve the Lord with gladness and come before his presence with singing. Not only that, but also in that same verse, in that 126th Psalm, David said, even the heathen took note of how God blessed them. Church, David lifted God in praise for his blessings, and he urged the nation to praise God because his actions toward them had made him glad. In other words, David was saying, I can't help myself. Church, when we reflect on the roads that each of us has traveled, we see our difficulties and our frustrations. But on that same road, we also see our victories over the frustrations life has given us. And through it all, it's been God who has helped us withstand all of our troubles. When our world was turned upside down by tragic events, it was God's grace that kept us from becoming cynical and disillusioned with life. When we witness how evil some people can be, his love has helped us keep loving others despite the fact that there are some folk who are hard to love. When we face and when their failure, when failure was all around us, God's constant encouragement pushed us to run on and see what the end gonna be. So I just can't help myself. Church, when the Lord has given us more than we expected or deserved, there should be an overwhelming excitement. Remember when David succeeded in getting the Ark of Covenant back to Jerusalem. David was so excited that the Bible says that he stripped off his clothes down to his linen ephod. And he went dancing through the streets, leaping and jumping and shouting for joy. And when he went home, his wife stared at him, began to scold him, telling him how he looked and how shameful it was that he, the king, that for the folk to see him dancing in the streets like a peasant servant. But in 2 Samuel, the 6th chapter and the 21st verse, David reminds his wife, it was before the Lord who chose me before your father, before all of his house. And he appointed me ruler over Israel. Therefore I will play before the Lord. In other words, David was saying, it was the Lord that has done great things for me. And because of that, I can't help myself. I feel tells it. But then in the next verse, he just basically says, and if you think that's something, you really going to be mad? For the next time he does something for me. Because I can't help myself. So when we look back at our text, look what it says in verse 3. It says, the Lord has done great things for us, whereof we are glad. One day a songwriter picked up a pen and penned these words. I came to Jesus as I was, weary, worn, and sad. I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. And church, because of Jesus, we should be glad. Because of Jesus, we should be shouting. When Jesus came into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey, there was a lot of people shouting. There was a lot of shouting going on. So much shouting that some of them that were just standing there with their arms folded, looking side-eyed at the crowd. They tell Jesus, they tell him to be quiet. But in Luke 19 and 40, I hear Jesus answer them, if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. And if you're like me, I don't need no rocks crying out for me. See, whenever you think about how good God has blessed us, there ought to be a whole lot of shouting going on. The preacher shouldn't have to tell you to lift your hands and praise the Lord. He ought to have not to pump you up, but you ought to be able to think about the goodness of the Lord, and it automatically comes out your mouth, because you say, I can't help myself. See, whenever you think how the Lord has picked you up, turn you around, and granted gave you food to eat, how he brought you out of nowhere and carried you into somewhere, there ought to be some waving, some clapping, some patting, and some shouting. You see, we're not doing it for show, but we're doing it because God's been good to us, and we just can't help ourselves. But I got one more thing, and I'm going to leave you alone. Verse 6 says, he that goeth forth and reapeth barren precious seed shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. Notice it saying they will come again with rejoicing. And when we look at the word rejoice, the first thing we see, it begins with re. And re is a prefix that usually means that something is about to be done again. Well, let me show you what I'm saying. To repeat is to do the same thing again. To recite is to give an oral account again. To re-enter means to re-enter again. To remember is to call up stored information so that you can use it again. So church, to read anything means we're going to do it one more time. And when we rejoice, it means that we'll have the same amount of joy in the present that we had at some point in the past. So what are you saying, preacher? Well, I'm glad you asked. What I'm saying is when we rejoice, we can rejoice in the hard times just as much as we did in the good times. We can have joy in the midst of tough times with the same level of intensity that we had in better times. Just like David said, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. In other words, I can't help myself. I'm getting ready to leave you now. But before I leave you, can I leave something with you? In case you didn't know, the Lord been good to me. I still have my problems. Sometimes I stumble, and sometimes I fall. But God has been faithful, more faithful than I deserve, more faithful than I ever could ask for. And let me ask you, has the Lord been faithful to you? Has the Lord shown his goodness toward you? Has the Lord ever restored you? Then tell me, how did you respond to God's goodness? How did you respond to his favor? I don't know about you, but I can tell you what I did. I rejoiced. And what I discovered is when I rejoice, he'll make the walls fall down. When you rejoice, he'll give you the victory. When you rejoice, he'll make a way for you. I can't help myself. Maybe windy in my life, maybe storms all around, but I can't help myself. Yes, I act a little funny sometimes. I act a little strange sometimes. But when I think of God's goodness, when I think of what he's done for me, when I think of what he's done to me, when I think what he's done through me, I can't help myself. I can't stop rejoicing. I can't stop praising. I can't stop worshiping. I can't stop shouting. But before I take my seat, you know I always got a question for you. And can I ask you a question? Don't fool me now. But here's my question. Is there anybody here that can't help yourself? Is there anybody here can't help but praise? Is there anybody here can't help but worship him? Is there anybody here can't help rejoicing? That's when let me see you wave your hand and say, that's me. That's me. I can't help myself. Ain't he good? I know he's good. He brought me from a mighty long way. Did he bring you? Did he bring you? Did he bring you? I know he brought me. He brought me out of darkness into the marvelous light. One day he reached way down. How far? Way down. How far? Way down. And what did he do? He picked me. He picked me up. He me on a road called straight. And because of that, Brother Samuel, I can't help myself. Brother Felix, I can't help myself. Brother Lash, I can't help myself. I don't care what you think about it, but I can't help myself. But every time I look around, every time I look around, I heard sister sing this song. Blessed my way. Blessed my way. The Lord keeps singing. Blessed my way. Won't he do it? Won't he sing it? Every day, every way. Won't he keep on singing blessing? Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Gotta go. I'm good time right now. But you remember when we was in old church? Huh? When the spirit gets hot. The pastor, the preacher preaching. And he get a point that all of a sudden everything that he was talking about come down on him. And every now and then, he'll just stand still and say, Y'all remember any of that? He'll say, yeah. He's doing it because he can't help himself. I used to sit back and say, wonder why he do that. But you know what I found out? He couldn't help himself. See, all of us have been through enough. The Lord has brought us through enough. That we all ought to be sitting and say, Lord, I can't help myself.